MLB slate breakdown. I'm Jason Gilbo, J Gilbo 11. Taking a look at the 5 games here in the evening. Starts off at 7:07. Um, it's a smaller slate. There are some decent options as far as hitters go. Pitching a little bit more risky. I think FanDuel, you're kind of leaning on playing your cash games there. DK, a little bit riskier side, but if you can find the chalk throughout the day, um, cash games are safe there. But I still think it's a lot of GPP arms for me on the hill tonight, which I talk about in the pitcher pod with Nick Tasso. So we kind of break that down there. You can check it out. But jumping right into things, looking at 7:07, New York and Toronto there. Um, Two arms on the hill that can throw the heat. Nathan Eovaldi, Marcus Stroman. Um, they do possess a tough matchup for right-handed hitters, so it kind of take things out of play for the most part in cash games. But I still think um, on the Toronto side, you can find some options. I still think kind of paying up for some of those big bats would be nice in tournaments, just because you're not going to get a Blue Jays stack with how they've struggled so far at pretty high ownership. But you look at guys like Donaldson. I mean, he's the guy who 390 WOBA against right-handed pitching last season, 256 ISO, absolutely dominated at home with an ISO over 300. Eovaldi's more tough on left-handed bats, so it's kind of tough to pick on him with righties. But, I mean, really, if you look at the Toronto side, they don't have a ton of left-handed bats to really pick on. Michael Saunders is the only one. Eovaldi allowed a 345 WOBA to lefties last year. Saunders not a guy who's really capable of really going off in this matchup for a sure thing. But I think, if he's hitting in that 6 hole, he's worth a look in GPPs just at his price tag with that matchup. Outside of that, can't really say I'm picking on Stroman, but you can look at all the lefty Yankees there. You can look at Gardner. You can look at Ellsbury, Teixeira. If McCann's back in the lineup, he's come out strong. Rogers Center, decent place to hit for lefties, so you can definitely look at them. But either way, I don't expect a ton of scoring, and if I do, it's going to be pretty selective. But I do think Toronto on that side is much more worthy of, getting to Eovaldi than the Yankees are getting to Stroman. So next game here, looking at Cincinnati and Chicago, Wrigley there. This is where my favorite cash game arm comes tonight, and that's Jason Hammel. He just has all the qualities I'm looking for outside of consistency, but you can't say consistency is a little iffy on this slate outside of Cole Hamels, but he draws a tough matchup. Hammel, I mean, he's one of the safer arms I feel on tonight's slate. Could be dealing with another Reds lineup that's without Zach Cozart and Meso Rocco. Cincinnati last season, 24th in WOBA against right-handed pitching, 20% strikeout rate. So you're really looking at Hammel to dominate this offense. And even though Raisel Iglesias is on the other side, you still expect the Cubs to put up some run support, which I do like a few of them. So really, Hammel, 24% strikeout rate last year, 3.15 ERA in 4 starts against Cincy. It was kind of 2 different seasons for him, or two different halves. 261 in the first half, 365 in the second. But Hammel, by far one of my safer options. I'm looking at him tonight, especially on FanDuel, where I'm leaning towards playing cash games just because you can only roster one pitcher there. So I'll go all in on Hammel there and build my lineup around him. So I do like some Cubbies lefties. Raisel Iglesias is going to be a solid arm in the bigs here for a long time, but so far small sample size, but he has a lot of 338 WOBA to lefties in his career with a 4.18 FIP. The K percentage is cut down dramatically with Iglesias and left-handers, 17.1%. Most of his strikeouts do come from the right side. So that puts guys like Anthony Rizzo in play. 388 WOBA against right-handed pitching last season, 259 ISO. You can look at Zobrist as well, 327 WOBA off right-handed pitching. A guy that I like on DK, who's a little bit cheaper, is Jason Hayward. He had a 358 WOBA last season against right-handers, 169 ISO. So really solid price tag for him. I think you can definitely look at Hayward. You can look at Fowler as well. Won't be targeting guys like Chris Bryant against him just because of the righty-righty matchup. Iglesias tough on righties. While Bryant, yes, he's a great hitter. I'll still take Iglesias in that matchup. So really look at those Cubs lefties as far as anything goes. Um, Baltimore and Texas, and this is where it kind of gets tricky because you look at Cole Hamels, you look at all the other names on this slate as far as pitchers go. Hamels by far the best name, by far the most quality pitcher on the hill. You're also looking at Baltimore, whose offense has been pretty strong to start the season, but they have faced a lot of mediocre pitching, so that's something to keep an eye on. Hamels really strong so far to start the year. I don't mind him in cash on DK. I do think he's more reserved for GPPs on FanDuel, however. But looking at the hitter side of things, you're looking at Chris Tillman. You're looking to pick on him a little bit. A reverse splits guy because he did allow a 353 WOBA to right-handers last season with a 1.75 home run per nine. Not a ton of right-handed bats to really get on Tillman with here. Mostly a lot of the lefties come from the Texas side. So a guy like Adrian Beltre, who had a stellar second half, I know we usually play him more against left-handers. I do like the price. 316 WOBA against righties last year was a lot stronger in that second half. Beltre is a bat that I'm looking to do big things with tonight just because he gets that matchup with Tillman. And while Tillman's thrown really 7 innings so far this season and has looked pretty nicely, he's also heading into Texas and facing a better offense than what he faced before. So I'll definitely be looking at Beltre, and I'll definitely be looking at some of those lefties, even though Tillman, really showed reverse splits last year. But Rougned Odor, he's a guy I'm looking at. Odor's the guy with some pop for a second baseman, 327 WOBA off righties, 210 ISO numbers. So you're looking at this ballpark here, 101 park factor for left-handed homers over the last 3 seasons. Kind of got some nice pop, although, as Nick mentioned on the pitcher pod, balls don't usually start flying out of here until the summertime, but it is a little bit warmer weather, of course, in comparison to the other games. So something to keep an eye on. Prince Fielder, great GPP play. Not a fan of him in cash games. Did have a 384 WOBA against right-handers last year, 155 ISO. Also had just a 10% strikeout rate, which is nice. I'm definitely looking at some other first basemen, I think, for paying up because I don't think you need to pay down. Fielder, around too many options on DK. He is a little bit cheaper on FanDuel where you can deploy him. So that's a guy to take a look at as well. Elvis Andrus, just due to the shortstop spot being a little bit weaker than usual, more so on DK because you can look at Alcides Escobar on FanDuel for a cheap punt play. As I mentioned, Tillman, 353 WOBA to right-handers. Solid park factor there. So really, that's about it for me. You can look at Nomar Mazara hitting second again. I love his price tag. As I mentioned, 6 hits through the first few games here, just a 16% strikeout rate. So showing the ability to get the bat on the ball and get it through. Not a big power guy, but this guy's going to get on and get some runs, and I like his price. I think he's a solid value option on tonight's slate. So he's decent. As far as the Baltimore side of things, they're all GPPs plays for me just because you're looking at Hamels being one of the better ones. Machado usually hammers right-handed pitching a little bit better than lefties, but still hit lefties fairly well last season. Machado still GPP play. Adam Jones, if he comes back, a GPP play. His price tag's fairly cheap, as well as Mark Trumbo. So really 3 names that you can look at as far as tournament plays go, because I think the majority are going to be on Hamels, and including myself. So I think it's an interesting swerve. 8-10, Kansas City and Houston, and you're looking at Ian Kennedy and Doug Fister on the hill, and I am obviously looking to target mainly Doug Fister, who really struggled with right-handed bats last year. And also, you're looking, he's not tough on lefties as well. So Hosmer, I'm looking to pick on with Fister. I think Hosmer's a guy who's really crushed right-handed pitching, 374 WOBA over last season, 181 ISO. Minute Maid holds a 122 park factor for left-handed homers over the last 3 seasons there. So it's a solid place to really do some damage. Fister allowed a 131 home runs per 9 to lefties last season. This puts Eric Hosmer in play, Mike Moustakas in play, Kendrys Morales in play. So you could really take a look at them. Alex Gordon, he's a cheap outfielder on FanDuel. He had a 345 WOBA off right-handed pitching last season. So really you can look at that. But Doug Fister really did struggle against the right-handers last season, allowing a 368 WOBA. And Lorenzo Cain, Alcides Escobar, obviously Cain did most of his damage against southpaws, but still 332 WOBA off right-handed pitching last year, 109 ISO. The guy has some power, 118 park factor for right-handed homers. So power, stolen bases, Cain can do this type of stuff. He's an expensive guy tonight, but I do like fitting him into my lineups, just especially if, with all the value that's on tonight's slate, there aren't a ton of guys to really pay up for. But I think Cain is one of them. So really look at him and Escobar on FanDuel. He's not a strikeout guy, just 10%. So he puts the ball in play. At that price tag, I believe he's 2,300. He gets on, gets a run in, maybe steals a bag. He's done his job. So that's something to keep an eye on. Look at him if you need to really bump up an extra guy or two. So also Salvador Perez, more so on FanDuel where he's 3,100. He's priced a little bit higher than I want on DK. I know he's really the only catcher on the slate that's kind of a bigger name. So he had a 325 WOBA off right-handers, 186 ISO. As I mentioned, Fister struggled against right-handers. So Perez, 3,100, can find a way into your lineups on FanDuel, but I'd rather punt down with some options. Brian Holiday, I skipped over him. Righty against Tillman, he's going to handle the load behind the plate there with Chirinos out. So he's a punt guy to look at, and then we'll get to one later on as well. So really, those are names to keep an eye on. As far as the Houston side goes, Kennedy allowed a ton of homers to righties and lefties last season. You're looking at Kennedy or Altuve here. We usually target him against lefties, but Kennedy allowed a 338 WOBA to right-handed bats with a 1.37 home runs per 9. Altuve already has 6 stolen bases this season. We've seen a couple times more so in the last few games. And really, Altuve brings that upside. And when he's not against the lefty, he's usually lower owned. So you can take a look at Altuve and GPPs. Obviously, you can take a look at Carlos Correa. He's expensive, but he's a nice way to pivot from kind of the chalk, kind of staying in a budget here tonight, especially in cash games. In tournaments. So Correa, 370 WOBA against right-handed pitching last season. The guy's absolutely dominant, 226 ISO. So if Kennedy kind of reverts back to that 2015 form where he was letting balls fly out of the park left and right, you could see some tonight. And I think Colby Rasmus, Luis Valbuena, Jason Castro are other names to look at as well in that Houston lineup. But obviously all GPP plays for me. Next game, Dodgers and Diamondbacks here. You're looking at Ross Stripling and Robbie Ray, 2 arms that are capable of kind of limiting damage here and not allowing a ton of offensive production, but there are some guys at great prices that will work their way into my cash game lineups. And it's mainly I'm looking at some Dodgers righties. Starting Yasmani Grandal came back last night. He's back in action. Make sure to get to lineups check. This Dodgers lineup is going to be the one that I need to get before really setting my lineups, and I'll kind of go through as I talk on these players as why. But if Grandal's back in the lineup here, you're looking at a 352 WOBA off left-handers. Doesn't have a ton of power against lefties, but Robbie Ray allows a 344 WOBA to right-handed bats in his career with a 38% hard ball rate. If Grandal's sitting in that 6-7 spot, he's worth a look, especially at that cheap price tag. Saves you a lot of cash from Perez on DK and also on FanDuel as well. So he's a guy to look at. Next one, Howie Kendrick. He's also back, so Dodgers are getting healthy. Kendrick's not a big lefty split guy, but second base, a little bit weaker spot. You can take a look at him. 312 WOBA off lefties last season. Not great, but definitely a cheap play to work into your lineups, if he's high in the order. So keep an eye on him. Justin Turner's price on DraftKings has really caught me off guard. 3,100, and I know this is a guy who didn't hit lefties all that well last year. He crushed right-handed pitching. He was a reverse splits guy, but still 318 WOBA off lefties, 152 ISO. Not bad numbers. And you look at Ray. I mean, with that hard ball rate of 38%, low ground ball rate, Turner hitting cleanup for the Dodgers. I mean, it's easy to kind of get a a couple RBI chances and a couple extra base hits from Turner there at a cheap price tag. So really looking at him on DK, I think he's a great price in all formats. Next one to look at, Yasiel Puig. He's my guy that I want from the Dodgers side tonight. Crushed lefties in his short career. Had a 393 WOBA in limited time last year with a 253 ISO. Puig off to a hot start so far this season. Price hasn't really caught up with them. On such a short slate, that's who I'm really looking at to do some damage. So, and the next guy, this one's I'm waiting for the lineups to come out. I'm hoping Trayce Thompson finds his way into the lineup tonight for a value outfielder, because you're looking what he's done against left-handed pitching so far in his short career has been absolutely phenomenal. 419 WOBA, monster 309 ISO. Going up against Robbie Ray, he's definitely a pump play to look at, and one that I'm definitely considering. But as well, we've seen Scott Van Slyke slip into the outfield, but there are a ton of lefties on this Dodgers team. I expect Howie Kendrick, who did play some left field, I do expect him to take over for Utley with the lefty on the hill. Should see Trayce Thompson or Trayce Thompson and Scott Van Slyke out there in the outfield. So see what happens. They might pull Jock Peterson in. So that is one to keep an eye on with that Dodgers lineup. One that I'll be looking at really before kind of setting my final lineup. So as far as the Diamondback side, I'm not picking on them too much because I think, looking at Stripling, he is a decent SP2 option on FanDuel or on DK with that cheap price tag as well as that matchup. You can look at Goldschmidt, you can look at Peralta as far as GPP plays goes, but not really on my radar. I don't expect a ton of production out of this Arizona offense anymore. So outside of those two, no one else is really worth a look. That's going to wrap it up with a slate breakdown. Check out dailyfantasycafe.com for all our great tools and content.